السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. And welcome to another, I will call it an episode of Friday Night Lights. Thank you for coming. Of course, today it will be Sheikh Ibrahim and myself. Today's topic is empathy. So the title is Empathy, How to Learn It and How to Teach It. So first thing is, I'm curious as to why you're here. Because, if the topic were, something else a little juicier, I expect everyone to be excited about it. And empathy, all right, who's going to be interested in empathy? So I'm curious to know why you're here. Anyone? Or is it just, this is the routine? No matter what you're talking about, I'm just going to be here. That's what we do on Fridays. Or is anyone really interested in this topic? Nobody's really interested in this topic? One person is? Yeah? Another one, just that looked like a donation, like just sadaqah. Okay. I know Sheikh Ibrahim is very passionate about this topic, and a lot of educators, school teachers, a lot of schools are always talking about empathy, because part of that plan is when they teach empathy, there's an indicator that it decreases bullying and violence and all those things. So let's start with the definition. Sheikh Ibrahim, first of all, welcome and start us off.
Jazakallah khair, thank you. Well, I'll get to the definition, and then if you allow me, I will ask you a question.
Okay, right from the beginning, Bismillah.
Yes. Well, empathy is, some people mix it up with sympathy. Let me just tell you what empathy is and what sympathy is. Or let's just start with sympathy. Sympathy is feeling for others. It's your own feeling for others. You sympathize with them. You feel for them. They're hurting. You feel their hurt. So you're sympathizing with them. You feel bad for them, or you feel sorry for them, or you give them some feeling. It is more of it is your own feeling towards them because they're hurting. It's not their feeling. But empathy is you probing to find out their own feeling and feeling what they feel. So it is like, it's to feel what they feel, to see what they see, to think what they think. It is putting yourself in their place, as if you're seeing the world from their own eyes. And it requires a lot of skill to be able to do that.
Okay, good. Jazakallah khair.
Yes, but my question is...
Oh, already?
Yes.
I just wanted to add to that, one thing I like, they were saying that when so someone might say, I'm empathetic. When I watch a movie, there's a sad scene, I tear up. That's it. Or I see someone laughing, I laugh. If I see someone crying, I might cry. And I love that they said that these kind of reactions, they're like sympathy. They cause this emotion in you, or some of them are even as a reflex, as a reaction. When you see someone laughing, you laugh, or someone crying, you cry. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean empathy, and that's why when you said that it's trying to understand the other person's perspectives, emotions, or even reality. Exactly. Putting yourself in their place. Yeah. That's bigger than just, oh, you cried, I cried.
It's like you're actually, and بالعربي بيسموها التقمص العاطفي. In Arabic it's تقمص, which means it's like wearing their shirt. From qamis, تقمص is qamis. It's like you're trying to wear their shirt. Meaning that you're actually putting yourself in them, trying to see the world from their own perspective, from their own eyes. And that is empathy. And that requires a great deal of connection with the person. But what you're saying is actually sympathy, and people who do that are capable of empathy as well. Yes. But they need to learn how. Now, my question to you is,
Bismillah.
Do you feel comfortable talking about this?
It depends. Let's see what this is.
Because why I'm saying this is you're a funny person. You laugh, you crack jokes, and you sometimes are sarcastic, right?
Sometimes.
And part of being unempathetic, I'm not saying that you are not empathetic, I'm not saying that at all. You're actually one of the people that really empathize. You're a teacher, and that requires a lot of empathy. But is sarcasm against empathy?
Very good. It can be. And when I was reading about it...
Because you're sarcastic sometimes, right? Do you admit?
Most of the time, yes.
Most of the time, okay.
But I was reading about what psychologists were saying. Someone who's not empathetic, this is the person where while you're having like a moment of crisis or something, they crack a joke. As if they don't care about how you feel. So alhamdulillah, my jokes are all well-timed and tasteful. And they are not when someone is crying and I'm like, hey, try to say a funny joke. But
do you feel comfortable talking about it?
About this topic?
About empathy?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Right. But
or
it's very good. I mean, I understand. I'm trying to, no, I do feel comfortable talking, but it takes vulnerability to be able to talk about a topic like this.
I'll leave that side to you and I'll stay
yes,
with...
well, vulnerability means if you're empathetic, you want people to also empathize with you. That means that you need to be vulnerable enough to let people into your own feelings, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of empathy. Sometimes people don't want to be empathized with. I don't know why, but some people are like that.
Yeah, they don't want you. They think it's like pity. They don't want your pity.
But no, we're not trying to pity you or sympathize.
Okay.
But some people don't like to be empathized with. It's like, leave me alone. Let me deal with this, right? And you adhere to their wish because they don't want to be vulnerable. And that's part of being empathetic towards them, is that you let them be, right?
That's true.
So.
Good, I like that. I actually wanted to read off a list of signs that you might need to work on your empathy. Because a lot of times topics like this, everyone's like, oh, I have empathy, or I understand people. But it might need a breakdown to realize, you know what, yeah, I should pay attention, I should listen. So one of the things in the list that psychologists mentioned, one of them is that you are obviously insensitive to the needs of others, and you cannot understand the pain of others. Now, everyone says, I understand the pain of others. But here's a really nice point. And you've probably met someone like this in your life. And if you're that person, we can change, inshallah. Every time I had a friend like this. Every time you tell him about something you're going through, he's going through worse. I'm so tired. And he would immediately say, not as tired as I am. Let me tell you my story. Maybe it's worse than yours. I'm so hungry. And this was a real person, friend of mine. And he would tell me, I'm hungrier than you are. Let me tell you when my last meal was. Maybe it was later than yours or way before yours. Yeah, I'm not like me. Not like me.
Yeah.
So that's not a good thing. Like, you're supposed to feel what the other person feels. You don't even want to hear what the other hears. The focus should be on me. Let me tell you how I feel. So I like that. That's a good point. Let me just run through them quickly. So they tried to, because they can't put themselves and feel what the other people are feeling, they also minimize their own vulnerabilities, and because they can't have deep connections with people. So when they're feeling vulnerable, whatever, they minimize it, they mask it, they try to cover it up. Okay. One thing they said that I liked, they're very mean online. They don't care how they make you feel with their words. Very nasty now, especially because they're behind the screen and possibly miles away. They're very, very mean online. And you probably noticed that. People online are but not everyone who's mean online is not empathetic, but it could be that this person that we're constantly. Then they blame others for their downfall. Everything is, the fault of someone else. I like this one. When they hurt your feelings, because remember, they can't connect with and see and feel how you feel. So when they hurt your feelings, they don't start to think that they caused it. They call you super sensitive, or you're hypersensitive, because right. I didn't hurt you. You're the one who had these issues.
Exactly. Yeah.
Go ahead, Sheikh. I've got more, but I don't want to.
No. I mean, I like what you're saying in terms of these people who uh, like they're insensitive to people's needs and pains, and whenever people try to speak to them, and I don't know why any person would want to speak to a person who's insensitive to their feelings. So, but it happens sometimes. It could be your spouse, and that I mean, where you want to go to express your feeling other than your spouse? So it could be that your spouse is not really connecting with you on that level, and every time you try to express your feelings, your spouse does not acknowledge that. So every person requires acknowledgement and validation, and that's the first step for you to actually be empathetic, is to validate what the other person is feeling. You may never be able to understand their feeling, but at least acknowledge that they're feeling that way. Sometimes you say, I feel tired. No, you're not tired. How do you know I'm not tired? Are you connected to me like in a way where you have like a nervous connection with me?
Yeah.
No. At least believe me when I say I'm tired, right? Believe me when I say I'm sad. Or believe me when I say I'm frustrated. Or believe me when I say I need this. It's a need. Oh, no, you don't need it. I'm hungry. No, you're not hungry.
Question, Sheikh.
You know?
Why did you say your spouse? Why don't you just save us time and say the husband?
No, because what I'm saying, no, it's not just the husband.
I'm giving you a segue. We
I
spoke
understand.
about it. Okay.
Look, when I say a spouse, it could be a callous wife or a callous husband. And I use the word callous, maybe it's too harsh. But there are, someone who's not empathetic is not necessarily callous. It could be that they're not empathetic because they don't know how to be empathetic. They don't know how to express empathy. But they have empathy. They feel what you feel, but they don't know how to express it. So they're not really callous. Or they could be fatigued. They could be gone through so much. They could have gone through so much that they are just numb to your feelings. So it's not that they are not
True.
empathetic, it's just they are unable to express empathy. It's not necessarily callous, but it could be the husband or it could be the wife. But it is a rule. When you are in pain, the first person you want to go to is your husband or your wife, right? To talk to them about that.
Okay, so I got one more, and it's, so they say someone who's never curious about others. Now, how are you going to be empathetic to someone if you didn't hear them out, if you don't know what their problem is, if you didn't even care, they look sad, you just ignore that, and you just keep going through talking about business or whatever it is needs to be talked about. So never curious about the other person, because you cannot be empathetic and know what the other person is feeling and experiencing if you don't talk to them, if you don't listen to them and understand them. And so if you don't hear them out, so that could be a bad sign. And this could be tricky because most people in a conversation, they're talking about themselves. They talk about their sleep habits and what they like to eat, what they don't like to eat. You're always saying I this, I that, I this. So that doesn't mean you're not empathetic, but when you never have any interest in the other person, that's not a good sign. And just from an emotional intelligence level and a communication level, you can't be that person. So always make sure. And I always tell people this is a good exercise. When you're at events, gatherings, whatever, just let other people talk about themselves. And they will enjoy the conversation more. Like you want to share something, oh, I'm allergic to this. Don't. I don't. I do that a lot. I was about to share something about myself. I don't. Let the other person speak. And they will enjoy it more, and they'll think you're a great listener and all the other stuff. But anyways, practice the idea of just testing. If you're genuinely interested in people, let them talk. You see them sad, let them speak about it. Whereas if you're never interested in what they say, that's not a good sign.
That's a very good point you're saying. Is the knowledge is important when it comes to empathy. What we mean by knowledge is that you really need to be observant of people around you. And alhamdulillah, being a teacher, actually, it gave me ample of opportunity to understand people because you are with them 8 hours a day and you're observing them. So you start seeing human trends, right? you start seeing all kinds of behavior, all kinds of experiments, emotional outbursts, or happy, or whatever it is that you start observing. So observation is important for you to be able to empathize with someone. If you don't know someone, you won't be able to empathize with them at all. And the problem with us now is that we are so busy with our, phones and distractions, and we're not we don't have any human connection. Some people may have one human connection once a week probably, because they're always with machines, or they're living alone. They come to the masjid, they pray, and they leave. Yeah, and so there is no attempt to learn about people and even know their name, even know where they are from, or what work they do, or what situation they have. That will make you able to empathize with them better and feel what they feel. If you don't know them, it doesn't matter to you. That's why a lot of people here in the West did not really feel anything for the people in Turkey, or I'm not saying generally did not, but they probably felt less than if it were something that happened here, because of the amount of knowledge they have about the people, right?
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so how about we get into some solutions, some ways to fix, become more empathetic, and examples,
I mean, one of the good things that we need to actually begin with is teaching our kids what we call emotional literacy. Make them literate in their emotions, meaning that a lot of kids don't know how to express their feeling, or at least put a name to that feeling. They don't know. They don't know what they're feeling at all. And that is lacking in literacy, feeling literacy or emotional literacy. Say I feel sad. Ask your child if they're 5 years old or 6 years old or 4 years old, how are you feeling? And teach them new feelings. If they cannot really express it, get them to know more about what they feel. Reach out within themselves so they'll know. So once you have words and meanings for what you feel, you'll be able actually to see that in other people as well. And that a lot of times, especially with boys, because we teach boys not to be emotional, and we praise boys for their academic achievements, and not just boys and girls. Now we praise them for their academic achievements, but we never praise them for their ability to be emotional, for example.
That's true.
And we tell the boys, no, don't be emotional. No, that's for girls. Leave that alone. Be strong.
Don't cry.
Don't cry, for example. Yeah, exactly. So, and that actually hurts them more than it benefits them, because emotional intelligence, whether we know it or not, really is a very good way to success. A lot of people are very smart intellectually, but they are zero in their EQ is zero, or not zero, maybe not really smart emotionally, and they're not going anywhere in life. They can't be socially acceptable. They can't, speak in public, or they don't acknowledge people's pain or their hurt, because they're not emotionally intelligent. Not because they are not empathetic, but because they don't know how to express empathy because of that.
Let me tell you a weird exercise that I do, and it's related to being empathetic.
Yes.
All right? So in the old days on my Facebook page, it was just videos. When I would travel, I would always try disgusting foods, not regular food. So people tell, oh, you have an iron stomach, you eat anything. No. If I'm drinking milk and that film comes, I'm sorry, but I'll vomit right into the glass. I can't stand gross things like fat with meat. Hate fat. I can't look at someone who eats fat. So I don't have a strong stomach like that. But then when I go to a different country, the first thing I ask them is, what's the most disgusting food, the smelliest food you have? And then we eat it. So there's a list that the scientists put like the 10 smelliest foods on earth. I tried number 1. And I vomited, and we tried it again, and we vomited. We have it on video. It's hilarious. Okay? Everywhere I go, I ask the same question. In Sri Lanka, Malaysia, what's the smelliest food people can't handle? Let me try it. And people say, why do you do that? And I always tell them, there's someone on earth who enjoys that. Actually, there are people on earth who enjoy that meal. And they go pay money to get it. And they really enjoy it. And I want for a moment to really try to put myself in their shoes. And that's why I eat it. I don't just want to, want to see, I'm going to try to like it. Why do you like that? And that's really part of empathy, because you're trying to put yourself in their shoes. And remember, the definition I gave wasn't just to see their emotion or to feel their emotion, but also to see their perspective and to see their reality of the world. And that's very important. Yeah. And that takes effort, and you have to try.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's the relationship between empathy and accepting advice from people? Because when you accept someone's advice, you're seeing something from one angle or through one lens, and another person will see it through a completely different lens. And it's not to say that the way they see it is incorrect. Maybe they're seeing a different angle than you. I learned this from one sheikh friend of mine. He would tell me, so-and-so gave me real good advice. And wait a minute, you take advice from so-and-so? He's like the community clown, or so why do you take advice from him? He doesn't know anything. And then I noticed that he will actually search hard, and he will find something good in everybody's advice.
Wonderful.
That's so smart. And it's such a good exercise.
That's empathy.
It is.
And reminds me of a story of a scholar. He said, I'll have some people come to me, and that he was a famous scholar of hadith, I forgot his name, come and narrate a hadith for me that probably I was the first one to narrate it. I was probably the one who wrote it. But he will come to narrate it to me, and I will listen to him as if I am hearing it for the first time. Even though it could be 100 times that I heard that hadith before him. But in order for him to make that person feel like he's contributing something, that is a high level of empathy to put yourself in. That man coming with a hadith is probably new to him, and you brush him off and say, oh, I know that. Sometimes, you have a kid who comes and tells you a story that you probably taught it to the kid who taught it to him, and he comes and tells you the story. You really have to sit and listen to him say the story from A to Z, so you make him feel better, and that he's contributing, and that he's coming to tell the sheikh or the teacher something new. And you make it feel like, oh, that's amazing, that's a great story.
So you don't tell them, I knew this story before you were born, before your father met your mother.
Exactly. I mean, that would make how would that make the kid feeling? So the idea is that put yourself, what we call mirror the person, put yourself in him. And that actually goes into al-mu'minu mir'atu akhi, right? Yes, a believer is a mirror of his brother. Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, so the Prophet ﷺ, when he gave this comparison, so he's saying we give each other advice. The believer is a mirror to his other brother, or to his sister, to the sister to her sister. And so the question is, why would the Prophet ﷺ liken the believer giving advice to another believer like when you look at a mirror? And in class we do this exercise, and there are like 30 different benefits in the comparison between a believer and the mirror. And just quickly I'll give like 3 or 4. But when you look at a mirror, you don't accuse it of lying, right? And when your brother gives you advice, you don't accuse him of lying.
You validate what they say, right?
Absolutely, and you consider it. When the mirror shows you a flaw, you're going to a wedding and you have like spinach in your teeth. Do you say, why did they have to show me that? Or do you say, you know what, I'm so glad I didn't go to this wedding with this thing in my teeth? So when your brother gives you advice or corrects you, do you get upset that he showed you something wrong with you, or do you appreciate it?
Do you break the mirror?
Do you break the mirror, right? And so on, and so many examples really with it. By the way, the story you shared, I heard that about Sheikh bin Baz rahimahullah. They said that when people would tell him a hadith, he would behave as if he heard it for the first time. He would be saying, Subhanallah, Subhanallah. And I like that so much. And it always reminded me of the exact opposite. Some people, when you're trying to give them advice or correct them, you tell them a hadith, they cut you off, finish the hadith.
Finish the hadith.
وفي رواية لمسلم it ends like this. والبيهقي mentioned it ends like that. Oh خلاص, you know what? طب خلاص, you don't need me and you know it all. Good
Right.
job.
Yeah.
Sheikhna, you know, so I'll tell you, one of my pet peeves is when something's been going on in humanity forever, and then we think like it's a, and I don't like this term, but I'll use it, it's a modern man thing. So like sometimes people act now like we invented modern man, يعني invented empathy, or we discovered empathy. And yeah, it's been in our deen, it's been in cultures, it's been amongst people for thousands and thousands of years. And I'm sure we have a lot of examples in the seerah of it.
The Quran, I mean, we read Surah Al-Duha. وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى. That is a great example of empathy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, first of all, this surah came when the Prophet felt like nobody is caring about him at all. Nobody's hearing him. And the wahi has been suspended for a while, maybe 30, 40 days. And people are telling him that Allah has abandoned you, right? Then Allah reveals these ayat saying that He has not forsaken you, He has not abandoned you, and that the result of your da'wah will be better than the beginning, and you will see great things, right? And then Allah is reminding him, when you were a child, when we found you as an orphan, when we found you as a poor man, when we found you as someone who didn't know much, and now we gave you knowledge, we gave you this, we gave you that. And then Allah is saying, فَأَمَّا الْيَتِيمَ فَلَا تَقْهَرْ. Allah is telling the Prophet to empathize with every orphan.
Nice.
Empathize with every poor man. That's in Surah Al-Duha. Empathy is right there, right? We don't call it empathy, but we call it feeling with others. Feeling the feeling of others, right? So, to give you an example, Prophet Muhammad was coming back from Uhud. And Uhud, there were so many Sahaba who died. About 72 of the Sahaba were martyred. And one of them was Aqraba, by the name Aqraba, radiallahu anhu. So he goes, and everybody, all of these kids are waiting for their fathers. And all these kids found their fathers coming, except for this kid, and his father is not there. So the Prophet noticed him. This is first step. You observe, you see, you discover, you find who needs that empathy. So he goes and comes to him. He says, "Where is your father?" He says, "He's not here." He learns that his father died. "What's your name?" "Bahr." Or Bihr. He says, "Your name is Bashir." Changes his name to a better name. Bashir means glad tidings. Give him, like, you are the person of glad tidings, great news. And he says, don't you like that I become your father and Aisha becomes your mother? The Prophet ﷺ realized that this boy just lost his father, and he's very sad. And he knew how he felt when he was an orphan, having lost his mother. And of course his father is not there. So he felt that. And because of this, the Prophet ﷺ embraced him and gave him comfort and let him talk and actually made him feel better. So that is empathy from the stories of the Prophet. There are so many stories that we can share.
But you did say, I hope everyone caught it, you said being observant.
Yes.
And actually psychologists put this as one of the first steps to being empathetic, is that you have to observe and be observant. And every human being has that ability, meaning to intuit emotions, to read facial expressions and body language, and even voice inflections.
Body language. The person may not have time to talk, may become numb, unable to express their feelings, but there's body language. There are clues that you, as an empathetic person, you'll be able to see these clues, observe the body language. That's a very good point.
I'll tell you a story, Sheikh. This was one of it was like a mass ICNA conference in some city, I can't remember. And it was a lecture, so you see the lights on you, and you just see like these dark silhouettes, you know. And this guy came down the aisle to sit in the front, and I couldn't see his face or anything. And when in the middle of the lecture, the way he was walking, I said, this guy has a big problem. I can't describe to you why or tell you because of this or that, but the way he was walking, like, this guy has a big problem in his life. And he sat down and the lecture finished and everything. And then after the lecture, he came and asked me a fiqh question. And I usually do something like this, but I just said, I answered his question very quickly and I said, that's not the real question. There's a bigger problem in your life. And he started crying immediately.
Excellent.
And it happened to me many times before. Like I boarded a plane, and Emirates, and they're like, welcome aboard. Kid a fake smile and all that. And the lady goes, welcome aboard. And I was like, she's unhappy. And then when we landed,
observant.
When we landed, she started chit-chatting as we were waiting for the door to open. So I basically mentioned it politely, kid. I can't remember the exact term, but I told her that something is making you unhappy in your life. I said, I saw it the minute I got on the plane. She said, is it that obvious? I said, no, it's not obvious, but I could see it. Now, why am I telling you this story? What I'm saying is, I don't have any particular skill. It's just, and everybody has the same, but most people have it turned off. That's why in the da'wah class, most of the time I'm talking about bringing it up a notch. Everybody has that ability. And I give the example of when you're watching some kind of TV production, movie, whatever, in another language, and there are no subtitles, you've missed the language barrier. The language is gone now. It's actually a barrier now. The language is gone.
But you'll understand.
You start to understand because now you start to focus more. Knowing that there's no language, you start to read the emotions. You know that, okay, Roberto's in a lot of trouble, and you just start to figure it out, right?
Right. So, that reminds me of the hadith, actually. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, one day he said, he was so hungry. But he's shy. He doesn't want to say that he's hungry. So he sees Abu Bakr leave the masjid, and he follows him, radiallahu anhu, and he asks him a question. And he says, I know the answer to the question. I only ask him the question so he can notice me and notice how frail I am. So he can offer me food. Abu Bakr answered the question, did not notice, and went on. That doesn't mean Abu Bakr is not empathetic, no, but for some reason, it's a bigger guy who will notice.
He's not the level.
Yeah, that's not the level. So I saw Umar. He said, went to Umar, asked him a question. I know the answer to the question. And Umar answered the question, did not notice the frailty of Abu Hurairah. The Prophet ﷺ comes out and he says, Aba Hir, you're hungry. He said, yes, O Messenger of Allah. He says, follow me. And he takes him to a house in the Ansar. And you know the story when he invited 40 of Ahl Sufa and they all ate a little bit of milk, and it became so fulfilling because of the barakah. So you see how the Prophet ﷺ was empathetic, because the Prophet ﷺ experienced the pangs of hunger, experienced the pain of being an orphan, experienced the pain of losing a child, experienced the pain of losing a wife, losing an uncle, losing so much, experienced the pain of being ostracized, of being disparaged or slandered. All of this made the Prophet ﷺ able to empathize with all these people that may have gone through these situations. A lot of us say, why would the Prophet go through this so much hardship? Because part of being a leader is to experience that, and a leader is the best empathizer, supposedly, right?
Okay, I like that. And I have a question that just came to my mind. So, as the scholar said, that there's not anyone on earth who could never relate to the seerah of the Prophet. Even someone with no problems ever can relate to the rich part of the life of the Prophet.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, is there such a thing? Can you empathize with someone from the past?
Oh, wow. That's a beautiful question. Thank you. Of course. It's that is the actual tadabbur of the seerah. The actual tadabbur, meaning reflection, the actual reflection and gaining the lessons of the seerah is to empathize with every character in the seerah. And that gives you, like, why Hatib, for example. I was I just finished teaching the students in the 7th grade the story of Hatib bin Abi Balta'a radiallahu anhu. Hatib bin Abi Balta'a, in the standards of the life that we live in now, committed a treason, right? Sending a letter to the non-believers of Mecca, telling them about the Prophet's plan that come into Mecca. It's treason, right? But the Prophet ﷺ taught us a lesson where he asked him a question and listened to his answer. He didn't judge him, and that's part of being empathetic. Empathetic is to not judge the person. Let them finish what they're saying before you can pass a judgment. A lot of us, when we listen to somebody, we are judging them as we're listening. We're actually looking for an answer to what they're saying. So Hatib came and told him. The Prophet ﷺ waited and listened to everything Hatib had to say. And then he forgave him because he empathized with him. He felt what he felt because Hatib was worried about his family. And that's how difficult family is. When you worry about your family, you may do irrational things sometimes. Right?
That's how they can be an enemy to you in that sense.
Exactly.
Right?
And you empathize with him. I did empathize with Hatib. I did empathize with, so many things. I mean, studying the seerah without empathy, you won't get the benefit. You will just be an academic.
You'll get the story only.
Yes, you'll get the story.
Without all the lessons and benefit.
I really appreciate your question, honestly. That shows your intelligence in that department. Thank you.
Just, we have it on record, alhamdulillah. So what you started to allude to active listening. Because when you're right, and again, like these are some of the points. How do I become empathetic? We said that you are observant to others, and you try to understand their state of being, not just only their point of view or perspective or what they're feeling. And active listening is mentioned as one of the things that will help. Because how are you going to understand the other person and understand their perspective and their feeling if you're not even listening to them? So, but many people, Shaykhna, active listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you can sense a little bit of my frustration because 20 years of doing the da'wah workshop, and one of the things that would baffle me is how everybody ranks themselves very high when it comes to these things. Oh, I'm a great listener. Wallahi, Shaykh, someone will come to you, ask you a question, and as you're answering, you can see that they're not listening to you. And you can you see it, you're not listening. And there are many cues when someone isn't listening to you, especially when you say something heavy or deep meaning, and they immediately go, okay, and you didn't even let it sink in, you didn't react to it, you weren't listening.
Yeah, it's frustrating, isn't it?
So now everyone's an active listener. Just a step or two or three, how do we become active listeners? What does it mean?
Well, active listening is, simply is when when somebody's talking, you are actually the first thing is you're not judging them. You're not judging what they're saying. You let them finish what they say and focus on the clues. There are certain clues that they give you when they speak that will give you an understanding of what they mean by these words, because sometimes we all say the same words but we mean different things. So active listening is you are trying to understand the words the person is saying without thinking of a reply, without formulating a judgment, without formulating an understanding until they have finished, taking into consideration their body language, the words they used, and their tone of voice. That's active listening. You combine all of this together because communication has several things: words, tone, body language, and the meaning of the words, and the culture the person comes from. Maybe he's coming from a culture that says a word in their culture is different from what you understand it. So it requires that you ask questions to clarify. That's active listening. You ask questions to clarify because these clues may give you mixed. So it means that you have to be patient. You have to give them the time, not be rushing I really don't like it when I'm trying to ask a sheikh, for example, and then the sheikh just is rushing me. Don't rush me, or tell me I can't answer your question. Don't rush me. Let me ask the question the way I want to ask it, so you'll understand what I mean.
Yes.
But a lot of the shuyukh, and we are guilty of that too. We want to hear the person while we're walking. That is not good.
Oh, you just ruined
Sit
my
down.
technique. You just ruined my technique.
Really?
Someone catches me here and do you mind walking with me?
No, you have to sit with the person and give them the comfort and the time to actually be comfortable saying what they need to say. Otherwise, they're going to say, never mind.
Shaykhana, I want to tell two stories about when you said cultures. It's so important. So when I was in Hong Kong, you know, in America, you open the door, the guy behind you or the person behind you says thank you, and they hold it. They don't just walk through. In Hong Kong, if you open a door, 8 people walk through it, tak, 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 just like that. You're like, أنا شغال بواب عندكم. I'm not a doorman, أنا. And so that frustrated me. Every time I open a door, mall, whatever, you open a door, people just, no thank you even. So they explained it to me. When they had the SARS outbreak, everybody became germophobic. Nobody wanted to touch door handles or anything. And even though SARS was long gone, when someone opened the door, that's my opportunity to squeeze through. So it's not that they were necessarily rude people.
It's survival, actually.
Yeah. Now the same thing happened to me, because you know, I visit Canada a lot, and I lived there for like almost a year and a half. And in Canada, so Canada looks just like America for those who haven't been. Like everything, even the highway signs are green and white. So a lot of times, because I travel a lot, I would forget that I'm not in the States. Because it just looks like the States. So I'd forget. Because every week I'm in another state. Sometimes I forget where I am. So every time I walk back into the hotel, something happens and I remember, oh, I'm in Canada. I walk by the front desk and the guy was kid. It doesn't happen in America. You walk by the front desk and the person greets you, good evening, how was your day? Something. Or they look up, smile, but hina bas, nothing. Oh, I'm in Canada. Or you're in an elevator going down, it stops on the 4th floor. A guy just gets in, looks at you, and turns the other way and waits for it to get to the lobby. When? Sabah al khair. Good morning, how are you doing? Hi, nod, nothing. So I thought, okay, where is the Canadians are polite stuff? So they still are polite. That's why you can misunderstand the people when you don't understand the culture. But they're not as like open and extroverted as people are in America, where you meet a stranger and they tell you about the divorce of their parents and like, take it easy, we just met. That's too much information. So they're very reserved. And I love to give the example of the greeters at Walmart. You know, in the old days, you walk in, and the guy at Walmart just says, hi, how are you doing? Welcome to Walmart. And they had that in the Canadian Walmarts. Then they polled their customers, and they said, what did you think of the greeters? And almost unanimously, everyone couldn't stand them. Like, I'm just here to get a jar of onions or something, and you're going to pickled onions, and you're in my face, and welcome to Walmart. Khalas, I just want to get the onions and get out of here. So they canceled it. So the greeters in the Walmarts in Canada, and I used to notice, I'd walk by, they don't greet you, and I asked about it. Because the customers didn't like that. It's not they were unfriendly people, but they just quieter, more reserved, and they don't want someone in their face, good morning and welcome and all that stuff. So understanding people and understanding cultures, that context is very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would like to add to the empathy aspect is, you know, to empathize with a person on how they feel and how they see things is great. But you know what is better than that is that you empathize with them when you are the one who has hurt them. When you're the one who have hurt them. Like, and it happens in relationships, that you try to understand, if I say this to this person, how would he feel? That is a high level of empathy. Like, if I say something to someone, would that person feel good about it or feel bad about it? So you examine the feeling of the person, and that requires that you understand the person and you know him, especially if you're in a relationship with the person, whether son, daughter, wife, husband, father, mother. Sometimes we say things, we hurt others without knowing that we hurt them because we got used to them, we live with them, but we don't know the impact of what we say. And because they just want to, live with the relationship and keep the relationship, they don't tell you that they get hurt when you say that. So it's good to actually examine this, and that is a high level of empathy between people who are in a relationship. And I see that actually in the school with the students towards each other. They don't know when they say something that they hurt someone in the class, for example. And frankly, they probably don't care because they've been with that person for years and it doesn't really matter, but it actually does matter, and it affects the people's perception, it affects the people's life generally. So it's important to have that level of empathy where you are the one who's hurting others and you want to understand, or you're the one who's making them feel happy and you'll understand how they're feeling.
I have a good story on that. And this was someone, he basically teaches negotiating, And in negotiating, of course, a good part of it would be to see this, let's say, business deal from their perspective versus my perspective, right? And that's really part of the key
exactly. That's emotional intelligence.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it's really the key to any deal going through. Like you just look at what your side, why that you should buy this or they should, sell to you.
Right.
But what, from their point of view, what do they get out of it?
Exactly.
So anyways, so he was talking with a client, and just the two of them, and then the man just opened up and complained about his wife and how she's overly sensitive. And I said this to her one time at a family barbecue, and she just started crying in front of everyone. And he said, okay, come. He said, I made him sit down. He said, I stood behind him. I said, you're your wife, I'm you. And he said, and everyone's here. Then he said the same thing. And then he said, how does that make you feel? So the guy wasn't answering me. He said, how does that make you feel? He wasn't answering. So I walked to the front, he was in tears. So he had to almost sit in her place to see that my words were really hurtful, And like we said in the beginning, like when you just tell them that, no, you're just sensitive, you're in another planet now.
Exactly.
So even your mistake is not your mistake. It's your mistake for being too sensitive. That's way too much.
Yeah, it's like you're not seeing it. You're not seeing it, unfortunately, because when you say you're not seeing it, that person is actually blind to what you see. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
Empathy is when people who are not empathetic is people who are blind completely to what you see. They may be seeing things that are natural, but they're not seeing exactly the things from your perspective. So how can they be empathetic towards you or feel what you feel? And so another thing of the empathy that I think is worth mentioning here is empathy in ideas. Like you may have an idea and someone else may have an idea, but you don't see their idea. So you try to understand why they think that way, right? And that's good with people who want to study Islam or you want to teach them about Islam in da'wah. You want to see how they hear the ayat when you read it to them. What are you hearing? And that's important. I do that all the time, by the way, when I read the Quran, to see what if I am not Ibrahim, and what if I am Michael or a Christian person. I'm reading this ayah. What do I hear? And that's important because the Quran was revealed and it was sent to everyone. And you want to know, as a da'iyah, a person of da'wah, you want to know how they hear it. So you'll try to help them understand it better based on how they hear it, not based on how you hear it, because you are from a different culture. You've been studying Islam for a long, long time. You know it. So sometimes you assume that they know this, but they don't, because they don't hear what you hear. They don't see what you see.
And that's actually a technique. One in the da'wah class would say, when you write a pamphlet about Islam, have a focus group of your targeted audience. Let's say it's for non-Muslims.
Wonderful.
Have them read and give you feedback, and then make the necessary changes. You're getting feedback from Muslims who understand the terms and concepts.
You got it from the
or
horse's mouth.
When they teach you how to write a persuasive article or a persuasive speech, one of the things they tell you is to think, okay, like those who oppose, what would be going through their mind? So I used to, in the early days, to do that. Like when you give a lecture, you know the people of the other point of view will have this argument. So now we're going to refute it within your presentation, so that you're.
That's really nice, and that means everyone who does da'wah really has to have empathy, has to know how to empathize, has to actually familiarize themselves with what emotions are, the names of these emotions, identify them, because da'wah is not just information you give to people. I read a book that was written maybe 30 years ago, and it's a really wonderful book, maybe more than that. It's called Ad-Da'wa ila Allah Hub, right?
Yes.
Yeah, to invite to the path of Allah is love, because if you want someone to become Muslim, you should love them first, right? You're not gonna you're not gonna want someone who you hate to go to Jannah, right? But essentially, as a Muslim, we don't hate people for being people. We hate what they do, right? Their actions. So essentially, we as Muslims and people of da'wah, we should actually love everyone in order for us to help them learn Islam. Otherwise, this is a gift that you give to the one you love, right? So that's
actually another thing that would start the da'wah class by saying, like, what makes excellent du'at? It's caring. Why were prophets sent to their own people and not like to strangers? Because they care, and that's why you find prophets always saying, Ya qawm, oh my people, Ya abati, my father.
Right.
And we would see it. We used to go and give street da'wah in DC in the old days, and this is back when DC was black. And there was an African American brother, and he was eager and excited and energetic, and he was there before everybody, and he was there till the end. And then one day, so inadvertently, he gave his secret. He said, these are my people, I love them. And that's why, that's the dafi', that's the motivator. Shaykhna, if we're going to wrap up some points, what do you have for us?
Now I want to actually ask you a question. Sheikh Ammar actually raised a point, and I like this point. I may differ a little bit on how it is redirected, but he says sometimes we have children lacking empathy because they don't have that, let's say, I don't know how to say it. A lot of mothers are working mothers, so they actually are missing a lot of time being with their mothers, and mothers are the reservoir of emotion, right? So when the reservoir is gone and that kid is actually starving emotionally, I mean, what's the truth in that? What do you think?
That's interesting.
Even though I think fathers are also reservoirs of emotions, we shouldn't discount the role of the father, because there are so many fathers who have, great ways of connecting emotionally with their children, and they can actually substitute whatever they're missing if their mom is busy, for example, right? I would imagine so.
Yeah, I mean, I could see. I'm quiet because I'm more interested to see if there are studies done on this area to see if there's some truth to that. But from a distance, I could see that, because where are you going to learn all this from? And where are you going to learn to? And by the way, women are better at intuiting emotions and reading expressions. They're better. And by the way, also, teens are good at that. So sometimes they choose not to, or sometimes they're not trained to. Right. So I could see some truth there also. But they're able to intuit emotions and stuff like that. Sometimes men are not good, especially when they turn it off. We turn it off a lot. So the wife will be upset, but she doesn't express what causes her frustration. She wants him to figure it out. So like one sister told me, she said, I'll get mad at my husband. And I will even get more mad at him because he doesn't notice that I'm mad. You know? So the husband just sitting there reading his paper and doing his hobby, and then he asks her a question. All day she's not talking to him. Then he asks her a question, she answers him angrily. Then he starts to put two and two together. This is 6 p.m. He's like, are you mad at me? Yes. I thought you gave me the day off.
So, I mean, there's this talk about, maternity leave, right? When the baby is born, a woman gets 6 weeks of work. and then she goes back to work, and the baby goes to daycare, and they don't get the same level of care like they are with their mother. They really need to be every 2 hours, plugged in and connected with their mother in that way, right? Not being fed from a bottle, for example, because that connection is really important. So that could play a role in that,
deal.
Right?
The psychologists, they refer to that as bonding during infancy.
Yes.
And there are some books about this bonding. It's insane, like when there's no good bonding, and we're talking about infancy, like small baby here. And when that doesn't happen, they actually had a psychology book that had a chart. It wasn't meant to be taken literally, but it had, with good bonding, you can become a philanthropist, someone who's caring and empathetic and all that. And then the chart goes on. It has, as an example, not to say, but it says used car salesman, meaning someone that would sell you a car knowing it's bad. You put all your hard-earned money into it, and he knows it's going to collapse down the road, but he doesn't care.
Right.
So they said that's the result of poor bonding. And then you go to, then they even have politician. Someone who, I don't mean politicians don't have good bonding. It means the kind of politician that will sign a bill that will affect 1.4 million people, but he'll get some kind of benefit and doesn't care. And then at the top of the list, they'll have serial killers because they don't care the least about how you feel. And then one of the interesting things, you start to look at the lives of serial killers, famous serial killers. Ted Bundy, he was born to a teenage mother. You'll find a group of them, a bunch of them, born to teenage mothers who, of course, like Ted Bundy, I believe his mother,
to adoption,
she was 14, I believe.
Yeah.
She could not bond with him. She was a child herself, didn't know. So there was a lack of or shortage here in bonding in infancy, which is a big deal.
So there is truth to it.
Absolutely.
Basically, yes.
Possibly. All right. How about we start to wrap up? What points do you have we can summarize?
Well, what I can just say is that if you really want a successful life, generally, a successful life in all aspects, you really need to learn how to be empathetic. And are you able to learn it? Yes. A lot of us are capable. Allah ingrained that in us, unless there's a problem or whatever, like the Sheikh here said. But it is a greater way of reaching success if that's what you're looking for. Because empathetic people are more accepted to people, are more loved, are happier. Generally, empathetic people are happier people. And empathetic people are able to also share their vulnerability. They have no problem with sharing their vulnerability. A person who cannot share their vulnerability cannot love, honestly, because love is being vulnerable. So if you want to be loved, happy in your marriage, happy with your children, you need to practice empathy. And we really need it so much in our community because we find a lot of disconnection. One of the teachers was telling me that she was talking to the kids about what happened in Syria and Turkey, and they were completely numb. Nothing. And actually one of the kids said, "We're in America, we're not there." It's like it's not happening to us. So it's really needed on the level of the Muslim community because we are the people that have the greatest message of empathy that can really change people's lives.
Barakallahu feek. That's a strange statement from a Muslim that you're part of an ummah. The word ummah just isn't just, it's such an interesting word in the sense that it encompasses, it's past, present, and future, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not just us today, it's us, and we're included in the ummah of Muhammad ﷺ, includes the ones that died before us and includes the ones that are alive today. And the ummah is still the ones who are coming in the future. And we always think of it that way. When we say the ummah of Muhammad, we think past, present, and future. Yeah. And where else do you have a concept that when you talk about a group, you're talking about even the ones that passed and the ones that are going to come are part of us too. So it's such a strong statement to say something like that. Anyway, Shaykhna, Jazakallah khair for all your points, your insight. Thank you everybody for caring about empathy, for coming here tonight, giving up, or benefiting from.
We're trying to empathize with them. They've been sitting here for a long time.
جزاكم الله خير.
I'd be antsy too if I were sitting there, right?
الحمد لله. بارك الله فيكم. صلى الله وبارك على محمد والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.